we all have one life to live or one life we'll remember. I don't know, but it's this one life, right?
Yeah.
Why not take the bold route and live to your fullest, even at the risk or the fear of losing the comforts, uh, the acceptance of your family? It's important to say, I really got to make this the truth and be authentic to myself. And maybe, which would happen to me.
Welcome to Tradition Breakers. I'm Mary Moses, former corporate executive turned creative entrepreneur. And each episode, I bring you an inspiring person or message to help more of us in the AAPI community break free from restrictive traditions that are preventing us from going after the life that we truly desire. Let's dive in. Are your ads costing more than they're bringing in? Are influencers posting about your brand but not driving sales? Are your emails going out but no one's clicking or buying? If that sounds familiar, your business doesn't need more marketing. It needs a sharper message and a smarter strategy. Hi, I'm Mary Moses, fractional CMO for hospitality, retail, and beauty brands. For over a decade, I've led marketing for national restaurant chains and e-commerce brands, helping founders grow by creating a clear, impactful message that aligns with who tells it, where it's told, and who it's told to. Because when your message, messengers, and communication channels are in sync, marketing stops being noise and starts driving profit. This month, I'm offering 5 founders a complimentary 20-minute brand growth reset audit. In this call, we'll do 3 things. 1, identify what actually drove results for you in 2025. 2, uncover the gaps limiting retention and profitability. And 3, define the 2 to 3 strategic moves that will position your brand to grow faster next year. To sign up, just go to tastydirectives.com. Now remember, there's only 5 spots, so if I were you, I would pause this real quick and just sign up right now. Again, that's tastydirectives.com. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Tradition Breakers. Today, I am super excited to welcome our guest. Her name is Ingrid Hu Dahl, and she is a coach and consultant focused on leadership development for executives within corporate and nonprofit organizations. Ingrid is also passionate about amplifying underrepresented voices. And Ingrid, that's why you've done like so many amazing projects in film, music, development programs for young girls, and now more recently through your book, which is called
Yeah.
Sun Shining on Morning Snow. There it is, beautiful
Yay.
illustration. A memoir of identity, loss, and living boldly, which we're going to talk about today. So, Ingrid, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
It's such an honor to be here with you today, Mary. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Ingrid, when did you realize that you wanted to write this book, first of all? Was like being an author something that was like a thing for you when you were growing up?
It wasn't a thing for me. In fact, I was told growing up that I wasn't a good writer. I kind of chalk it up to growing up bilingual, where my first language spoken in my home was like Mandarin and Chinglish. But what's so amazing about Mandarin and Chinese is it's very visual and pictorial. So a lot of the way that I would speak was in description and analogy. So I was always told like, "Oh, you don't have the command of the English language." So
Mm,
no, I wasn't it's not something I grew up thinking I would do. I was
mhm,
inspired to write my memoir right after losing my mother to cancer, and it was this like unexplainable jolt. It's as if the cracking open of loss and losing my mom allowed there to be a space of possibility and
mm,
making sure that our stories were told and marked in history, like almost counteracting a potential erasure, which loss can feel like. Never will my mom be able to write her story. And even in my writing my own story, I'm only stitching together pieces of her story, of what I know of her story. So it feels completely incomplete from her journey, but at least I have her captured in some way.
Mm.
So that's the reason, the raison d'etre, the reason
Mhm.
why, the inspiration. I think it's interesting, like growing up mixed Asian, being other, being outsider, being exoticized, all these things. For some reason, it goes into the subconscious and conscious that would anybody be interested in reading my story? And that's ridiculous because, ever since the book has come out, so many people have expressed not just interest, but emotionally opened impact that they've experienced, a different kind of connection, a curiosity and empathy. And that's what I hoped. It serves as a gift, this book.
Yeah. It I definitely got that while I was listening to your voice because of the audiobook that you had gifted me. And it's so ironic to learn that you were sort of discouraged from writing or being an author because you're so good at storytelling. I was
Thank you.
You are. I felt like I was watching a movie while I was envisioning
Mm,
these scenes as you were talking. And
awesome.
so, yeah. So when you're talking about connection and you were just mentioning what you were going through and your experiences, I can just kind of picture myself going, yeah, I remember that scene and that scene and that scene because you were doing an amazing job vividly telling the story. So I think
Mm.
that was really cool. So, sun shining on morning snow, that is so poetic. What does that mean to you? And how does it symbolize your own process of identity and loss and living boldly?
It's a beautiful question. And it is a visual that my mom sat me down and explained in why she named me Tao Shreqing. So, Shreqing is interpreted in a couple different ways, but the visual that she described, my mom described to me, is that there's a big storm, a big snowstorm, and the next morning, the sun is shining on this kind of fresh, crystallized, powdery snow, and that sparkle, that, iridescence is my name, sun shining on morning snow. So it's very poetic that the title of my memoir is that, and what's really special is that visual, that imagery comes into play in bookending the story, which you can't plan, but that's how it happened in real life, in lived life. It's poetically my name. It's an image that comes into the frame because you brought up kind of like these scenes. And I
Hmm.
just want to circle back and say, I had really great team members, like my publisher and my substantive editor, who's Katie Gee Salisbury, author of Not Your China Doll, who also is mixed Asian, and my writing coach, Stacey Ennis, and many others, which I acknowledge in the book because this is almost like a universal story, even though it's my own, about this kind of process of being mixed, of othered,
Hmm.
of not feeling like you belong or fit in. And then what was really fascinating to me is how easy homophobia as a queer woman came to me, internalized homophobia, because being different in another way was just too overwhelming. And I want people to feel what that felt like, and gosh, I really do hope it gets adapted. I love that you brought up it's kind of like scenes of a film or a series because that would be awesome. Because we don't
Hmm.
see enough of this representation yet.
Yet, exactly. I think my hope is that we can get to see more since I am observing that there are a lot more kids out there who are coming into this world who are mixed, right? Mixed Asian kids, other mixed cultures
Yeah,
also.
it's the
And I think,
fastest growing population in the
yes,
US right now.
yes. And it's so helpful to have people who are older than you and learn from their experiences, I think, and you touch on this as well during our conversation prior to this interview, is learning from others who've been where you are too is so important.
Well, the first title was actually in my manuscript, Hapa Grandma or Hapa Auntie or Hapa Ai. I was trying to play with, how can I step in and be that elder that I never had, that a lot of these other generations, mine included, and those coming
Yeah.
to follow, don't have. So how do I offer that? And it was sweet. The team I was mentioning was like, No, you're not a grandma. So, why don't we, they encouraged me to use my name. And so a lot of that I want to attribute to the team helping me see, like, no, that, it's poetic. People might not totally get it, but you're not a grandmother. You are
Not
you.
yet. Yeah. Not the grandmother elder yet. But one day maybe. Were you writing this for that little child, that little girl, or that little mixed boy when you were going through the process? Or
They
were
were in
you
my
writing it more for
thoughts.
yourself?
They were definitely in my thoughts, the next generation, how do
Mm-hmm.
I help share, and of course it's different. Even my cousin who's in her early 20s, who's also mixed Asian, also a lesbian, we were chatting just recently in DC. She came to my event and you're like, she's like, it's so different what I experienced, but it was so important for me to read your journey and our family's history. So, yes, I was definitely thinking about the next generation. When I was working with my writing coach about really clarifying the audience, it was interesting because perhaps the most targeted audience are other mixed race, interracial, multicultural, and people of color.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important to say, hey, there is this other kind of interesting in between space, and adding the intersectionality of being part of the LGBTQ community. It's a story that's really multifaceted. And I think a lot of
Yes.
people can relate to it, and loss in many ways, not just the actual loss through death, but there's loss of community, there's a loss of belonging in
Yeah.
the journey. Yeah, so I think it's just definitely other probably women in my age bracket who would understand. But another group was actually the more homogenous dominant. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted white people who, for almost every day of my young life and even sometimes current state, will ask me, "What are you? And where are your people from?" I was like, how can I help provide this gift of laying bare what it's like? I'm going to invite you to be in my shoes. And
Yeah.
I'm seeing incredible results from that community who are like, whoa,
Mm.
I had never opened my eyes to those phrases. I've been talking and showing up differently with my friends.
Mm.
That's pretty profound that a story like mine could shift somebody's understanding of difference and otherness and be more thoughtful and curious, and an interest to kind of reach across difference in a new way, in a way that
Mm-hmm.
feels much more human.
Yeah. What makes them want to pick up your book? Someone who is white and in that dominant culture or society.
I actually think the title helps a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I would say the two faces, my illustrator, Hannah Barczyk, did such an amazing job on
Amazing.
the cover. Yeah, she's a dream to work with. I think we spent a lot of time, my publisher and I, coming up with the description for the back cover, how
Mm-hmm.
to make it drawing in a, wide variety of audiences. So it's not just that it's like, hey, you have to be mixed
Mm-hmm.
race, queer, have lost somebody you loved, or don't live boldly. And so now you should read this book. But if you look at the reviews that I've had from, I think about 65 some people, so many people are saying this is not a story just for these groups. This is like for everyone and it's universal. And here's how it impacted me. So I'm hoping that it's like array of how we, position the book, how the website pulls people in,
Yeah.
and what reviewers are saying.
Yeah. What I took away from it, or one of the takeaways that I had while reading your book, was you help leaders, you develop leaders. And I think throughout your book, I observed that you were like, you were developing the leadership within you,
That's right.
you were uncovering things about you that you did not quite understand. And sometimes you had moments where you shied away from it, like your almost like your coming out story. You're wanting
Mhm.
to really explore your body with other women. And to me, that was like, I was kind of like cheering you on, like, you can do it, you can do it. But that's you going through the process of how you were leading yourself. So,
Mm.
can you talk to me about that? Like, what were I guess, what were your tools that you had on hand that allowed you to learning how to lead yourself?
It's interesting in the book, there are these moments where I'm very naturally bold, walking the hallways after landing from Taiwan, and my mom's kind of in customs, and I'm just walking out. There's sort of like a boldness of, I belong anywhere, everywhere. And there's some freedom and independence in like the love that I felt for horses and being drawn to that liberation, or being on the back of a scooter when I'm like 4 zipping through the streets of Taipei. Like, there's this feeling of you're going fast and you're okay. All of that sort of, and also growing up with this sort of American lens too, which is a lot more talky and loud and bold and say what you wanna say. I challenged my parents a lot. I challenged the cultural expectations, the gender expectations. It didn't mean those things weren't, like, hurtful or oppressed or felt, difficult or depressing from it, and that's absolutely where therapy as a tool came in. I love therapy, I think it's so important, and coaching. I received coaching for a long time, which made me fall in love with and wanna become a coach. This is very much a leadership origin story, as you sort
Mm,
of were conveying, going
mhm,
through all these experiences, sharing that it wasn't always easy. It wasn't always something that just came naturally. I had to
mhm.
fight for and want to live boldly and to choose myself and to choose truth, even in these moments where I was
Yeah.
confused or down and out. There was also communities that showed up after me taking
Mhm.
risks, like flying to Portland, Oregon, which I'd never been to do my graduate practicum at the Rock and Roll Camp for Girls, and met such a welcoming queer community of musicians. Moving from New York when I felt very comfortable with my community into San Francisco's community, and I having to start over again. But I think each of those phases, if you will, remind me of my mother's idiom of you have to go through multiple rounds of fire to
Mm,
become the purest of gold. And what I'm sharing in my story is how I went through that. And I continue to go through that today. I think it's reminding leaders, we're all on a path and a journey. Phases, if you will, remind me of my mother's idiom of you have to go through multiple rounds of fire to
mm.
become the purest of gold. And what I'm sharing in my story is how I went through that. And I continue to go through that today. I think it's reminding leaders, we're all on a path and a journey, present and slowing down and wanting to learn and wanting to deepen and connect with people and listen to understand what people are saying. That's an ongoing practice and a behavior. Call it emotional intelligence, call it cognitive behavior theory, call it adult learning development. We need to be investing in these very simple tools to make sure that we're not getting distracted, whether that's
Yeah.
ego driven or fear based. Let's really just take a real courageous look and say, how do I choose to show up today? And if it was the more bolder option, how do I get closer to that if I'm not taking that yet? And, people might be listening and saying, oh, I don't know about being bold every day. I actually think being authentic and vulnerable is boldness. Leading with your heart, leading with forgiveness is being really bold, but also stepping out of a narrative that's not yours, or a belief or an assumption or a judgment that you felt was placed on you or was forced fed into your consciousness. You can choose your truth and get out of that and live boldly. And
Right.
to your point, there are so many tools and therapy and a willingness to be open to not knowing, and a willingness to be open to growth and learning.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you almost, as a leader, you almost need to become comfortable with discomfort. or
Oh, yeah.
comfortable with the unknown, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's
Like besties. It's like your bestie is like
besties.
discomfort and you hang out every day.
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
If you want to do things that have never been done before, or if you really want to live truthfully and align with your values, you kind of have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think like your parents modeled that almost for you, right? Interracial marriage, as you mentioned to me, wasn't even legal 13 years before, right?
That's right.
Where you were born. And so them coming together, two people from different cultures, they themselves experienced being othered, and so you coming from that love, coming from that union, it was almost sort of like destined that you were
Mm.
going to have to break from, these beliefs or limitations or traditions that the greater society has put upon its people.
Oh, man, that resonates with me. Yeah, I am the result of their boldness and their love. And it
Hmm.
does feel like I have had the great pleasure of being rebellious and being full of heart.
Yeah. You're just like destined to be a badass. I love
I
it.
love that. I'm gonna take that. That's a gift. Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome. How was it telling your family, like your brother or, your aunts and uncles, how was it telling them about you writing this memoir? And
Ooh.
yeah, like what was that process like? Because some of them are in the book, obviously.
Yeah, a lot of my family members, I think, were uncomfortable that I was writing a
Mm-hmm.
memoir, and they were wondering if I was going to add certain things that would, you know, be uncomfortable, speaking of discomfort,
Yep.
or shed a certain light that, they didn't like. And I was tasteful. I also didn't have any kind of approach that was like mean or threw anybody under the bus. It was very, very kind. And I don't think that they knew what to expect. My brother was fascinating. I think this gave us more of a conversation to talk about the differences that we experience in being mixed Asian, our genders, our respective sexualities. He's always been my confidant. He's been the bridge to the family when it's fractured around my queerness. He was the one who, was there for my wedding and had a role in it and, said the best speech I've ever heard at any wedding.
Mm-hmm.
He's such a special, amazing anchor for us as a family and for me in particular. But what I was so surprised by, given the context I just shared, he was pretty defensive in some important ways about my mom in the first manuscript draft because he's like, "Ooh, you're making some big assumptions or, I don't know. She's not alive to be able to contest that or to say what's true." So what I loved is he ended up being almost her protector and confidant and also just set me up with like, "Ingrid, you are bold and you say certain things and there's things that you wonder about mom, but again, let's respect that she's not alive to say anything about it." And I
Mm-hmm.
very much respected that. I changed some of the things throughout the edits of the book that, really was through the lens of I'm gonna say what was complicated and real for me, but I'm not gonna make, kind of broader assumptions about why or what might have been happening underneath all of that,
Mm.
because that's just an unknown.
Yeah, I love that he empowered you to own your experience.
Yeah, it
That's
was awesome.
he's so great.
He
Um,
is.
it makes me happy that because I have a 10-year-old, but I also recently gave birth to a son. He's 9 months old now, so it makes me happy because now I'm kind of like seeing them down the road with you and your brother and how you guys have each other. So
We
that's
do, and it's
special, that connection.
it's such a gift that your 10-year-old now has a sibling, so how generous of you.
Thank you. You talk about how career identity can mask deeper truths about who we
Oh,
are.
yeah.
That to me, I felt like I was being called out, not in a bad way, but like in a very healthy way, because for the longest time early in my career, I was so almost to the point of distracted by my career, where relationships and emotional intelligence were sort of things I just did not deem as important.
Mhm.
And so when you said that, I'm like, that's exactly where I was in my younger years. And so when did you realize that your career persona wasn't and doesn't have to be your whole self?
It was definitely after my mom died, unfortunately. It was a time where I was in big tech and a lot of things were happening. It was, still kind of the outro of COVID. Lots of things were happening and are still happening within like the tech sector. And I think the role that I was in just wasn't really set up for success. But that was definitely the biggest like, whoa, my ego death around, you know, my affiliation with my title, the company I was working for, the ladder I was trying to climb, which is not bad. Like it's okay to climb a ladder and it's okay to go to a lattice. But I think looking back also at my mom's journey, she was a
Hmm.
tech pioneer. She
Yeah.
ran teams of 100 software engineers. She was innovative and did all these really high successful things. But in her journey, there are two things that kept happening. One is that every time she would get so high up or so well performed, the male bosses would always hire somebody in between them and her. And it was always a less capable white man, almost
Hmm.
always. And it always broke my mom. I watched it break her. So every few years that would happen, and she'd be in bed crying for like 2 days and just miserable and depressed. And I was like, wow, what power these people have in their careless and selfish decisions on this beautiful woman that they so deeply rely on for her brilliance and her leadership. The second thing that was really interesting is I watched my mom also go through a bit of a career crisis, and where she ended up gaining a lot more empowerment and purpose was actually going back to Taiwan and working for the family orphanage. She did all this amazing work. And while she was diagnosed with the stage 4 version of her cancer, she went full force into a social worker master's degree. So it's her third master's degree in social work. And she had this amazing vision of how technology can support people who are at the very end of their lives. And for a lot of these elder folks that she was working with, some of them felt suicidal. Some of them had families who never visited them, or they truly were alone, the last of their herd, so to speak. And
Mm.
how can robotics offer comfort and warmth? There was like a seal that was being like tested and there's all this really great data about how this like warm kind of robot seal was soothing the elderly who were bedridden. And my mom just had this like beautiful way of reconnecting her past of this like tech pioneer to this future of using that to help and understanding social work in this way where it was not very long after she graduated with the highest honors
Mm.
where that she died. And
Mm.
what's fascinating too about my mom is she didn't tell anybody, not her professors, fellow students, that she was sick. She had an internship where she stayed in San Francisco with me and my wife for the summer and didn't tell anybody, even though she had a cough. And she's like, oh, I just, have a cough. It's amazing to see. And it was encouraging for me to be like, wow, your career should never be the main thing. It should never define you, and don't
Yeah.
let it. And giving up pieces of your soul or happiness to allow a company to be careless about it because they don't need to care. They're not asking for your soul, but they'll take it.
Hmm.
I think I watched her transform too into this powerful being that said, I get to decide, and my career or my journey is what I make of it. And I saw her do that in her late 50s and early 60s. So then when she died and I went through my own early version of that, I think I made a pact to myself that I would take mom's lesson now and it would be the big
Mm.
transformational anchor moving me forward.
How did you apply that lesson? What did you do when you decided to do that?
A lot of time healing, a lot of time in nature, breaking up with this sense of cortisol and, like,
Mm,
having an entire day filled with meetings and not making any time for my mental health, emotional health, physical health, my connection to my family, my wife, my dog, my friends. Like, I went in nature a lot, sometimes for hours. I just
mm,
had a lot of months where I needed to really reset and return. And then I started my coaching and consulting practice, and I was writing the book and got another lesser intense role that afforded me the ability to really lean into the book and my business and my clients. And I found this kind of beautiful balance where I could still work really hard at work and have really good boundaries because the bigger purpose was what I was doing with
mhm,
my company, with my story, with my speaking experiences. Like, this was a totally different way I reoriented the priorities in my life, and also didn't really give a ton of effort and energy into, like when performance management happens and everyone's in a tizzy and you're like,
yes.
oh my God, I want to get exceeds or whatever. It's like very human and so strange. Like, that whole system is kind of odd. We could talk about it for like an entire session. And I let go of somebody telling me what they and a system and a highly politicized system
Mhm,
would dictate what my ratings were. I knew how well I worked, and I didn't let that impact me as much. I was like, well, if I'm crushing it and all these three things, and you see me as just sort of, performing okay, that's fine with me.
mhm, yeah,
Honestly, because I
I
know
love
I'm
that.
crushing it.
Exactly, exactly. There's this sense of self-assuredness that is so important to have when you're in that type of climate in the corporate space. And what I love about you telling this story is that even as your mom it transitioned to another plane, you were able to turn that experience into like a gift, an opportunity
Mhm.
for you to like be something else because of that. And look what it brought you. Like you have a different profession, the book, your practice, this mission that you have, guiding people through authentic, truthful leadership for themselves is really powerful.
Thank you,
So
Mary.
that was amazing. It almost is like this memoir feels very healing, and I'm not even the one who like wrote it, but what is your hope or what do you envision that people will like actively take away from reading
Mm.
this? Yeah.
First, this definitely was very healing for me. My grief journey, I don't know if it's around it was exponential. It was just like a lot was reckoned with, a lot of going back in the past and writing and sitting with grief and sitting and rereading and rewriting and then having to narrate it and re-narrate it and re-listen to it and re-listen to it. You have relived
Wow.
these painful moments and it's like every time though is like you kind of healing and also holding on. It's sort of like what we talked about, like, discomfort becomes the bestie, grief
Mhm.
becomes a bit of a bestie and a teacher. And it's a wild thing at first.
Hmm.
It's like a wild beast in your house, knocking everything over and ripping things to shreds. And it can hurt you. Like you don't know how to communicate with it. It's angry. It's
Mm.
volatile. It makes everything that was harmonious, like, turned upside down. And over time and, like, sitting with this piece and writing about it with it, it was like it became more tame,
Mm.
perhaps, and it also became like, "You and I are part of the same wolf pack. You are going to always be part of this team." It's a team of 2 now. It's not just me. And yes, there's, my wife and my dog and my community, my family, but in my, who I am will now
Yeah.
be with grief. So that
Mm.
was a very high-paced we arrived, I think, a lot faster, perhaps, than a lot of other journeys because I was throwing myself so intensely into this story with a
Yeah.
lot of love and playfulness too. It was amazing. But going back to your question, I just wanted to share that. I have noticed, and what I do hope, and so I'm seeing it happen, and it is my hope, is
Yeah.
that readers or listeners feel their heart chakra opening.
Mm.
So a lot of people, whether they're telling me what their experience was or they, wrote a review, most are like, I ended the book crying. And it's fascinating because yes, it's painful. I'm showing you like what I experienced, but there's an
Mhm.
uplifting part to it.
Mhm.
And I'm hoping the experience of having that heart chakra kind of crack open allows for there to be an ooze of new opportunity, some new love, some new forgiveness, some new bravery or courage. And with identity and being different, what I really hope is that in such a polarized world that we live in right now, that there's so much more empathy, curiosity to connect and relate across the aisle, across difference, and return back
Mm.
to our humanity. Because this book is welcoming you so intimately
Yeah.
in, a little girl's life and a woman's life and a leader's world. And because there's so many themes that are relatable, I want people to be able to see themselves and their stories and what kind of story do they want to say happened to them. Because we all have one life to live or one life we'll remember. I don't know, but it's this one life, right?
Yeah.
Why not take the bold route and live to your fullest, even at the risk or the fear of losing the comforts, the acceptance of your family? It's important to say, I really got to make this the truth and be authentic to myself. And maybe, which would happen to me, there could be reconciliation, but the goal can't be the hope for reconciliation. The goal has to be, I know in my story that I stood into that space and it was bold and it was honest and it was about humanity. It was about reconnecting to myself and reconnecting to people in a way that's not so harmful or so distant or
Mhm.
what everything is trying to get us to do to be less connective to other humans and to animals and to nature. And this is a return. Let's return to those because we have choice.
Right. And when you say that, it makes me realize that being a leader isn't about telling people what to do. It's about
No,
connecting with people and getting
that's
to know
right.
them and, caring about them. That's what I'm
Mm.
getting from what you're saying. And are your ads costing more than they're bringing in? Are influencers posting about your brand but not driving sales? Are your emails going out but no one's clicking or buying? If that sounds familiar, your business doesn't need more marketing. It needs a sharper message and a smarter strategy. Hi, I'm Mary Moses, fractional CMO for hospitality, retail, and beauty brands. For over a decade, I've led marketing for national restaurant chains and e-commerce brands, helping founders grow by creating a clear, impactful message that aligns with who tells it, where it's told, and who it's told to. Because when your message, messengers, and communication channels are in sync, marketing stops being noise and starts driving profit. This month, I'm offering 5 founders a complimentary 20-minute brand growth reset audit. In this call, we'll do 3 things. 1, identify what actually drove results for you in 2025. 2, uncover the gaps limiting retention and profitability. And 3, define the 2 to 3 strategic moves that will position your brand to grow faster next year. To sign up, just go to tastydirectives.com. Now remember, there's only 5 spots, so if I were you, I would pause this real quick and just sign up right now. Again, that's tastydirectives.com. With the coaching work that you do now, the term humane leadership, moving from control to authenticity, what does that mean to you now after everything that you've learned?
Well, it's interesting. Humane is almost always in relationship to abuse. right?
Mhm.
There has to be some former abuse to then let's go with being more humane.
Mhm.
And people can argue that, but just for the sake of that position right now, I think that there is so much toxicity and so much borderline abuse in our careers, in our worlds as leaders. It's really hard to hold steady with your values and the integrity because there's a lot of fear and
Mhm.
uncertainty.
Mhm.
I think being human and showing up and choosing to participate in caring for your team and choosing to participate in belonging and choosing to say, hey, I'm going to be very vulnerable and open about what's going on for me, what's going on for you. And then slowing down to really listen to hear what somebody's saying and
Mhm.
asking questions that you want to hear the answer. You're going to listen to the answer. And the
Right.
questions are good. They're questions that start with what. So they're exploratory, like, "Oh,
Mm.
what inspired you to take that route in solving that problem in that way?" Is very different than, "Why did you do it like that?"
Exactly. It's very judgmental when you do the why,
Yeah,
right?
and
Yeah.
I used to do tell me, which is from, the communication style that's a bit more direct. They also
Mhm.
love it when people say, "Tell me." I
Mhm.
love hearing that. I'm like, "Ooh, sure, I'll tell you." But I think we just have to remember that this is often a time that requires us to do this extra work of recentering. So, how
Mhm.
do we bring down cortisol? We have to breathe, choose to slow down, choose to create some space when things are feeling really overwhelming, and then change our posture where we increase some testosterone. And then think of something that does give us joy. Maybe it's seeing our animals and curled up in a little tiny circle. That's mine. And then feeling that joy innately brings in oxytocin. So just the neuroscience of how we can recenter ourselves as humans, because we're just these human beings that have, a lot of different hormones and things happening. We can't just rely on the state of the amygdala, which is
Mm.
what everything is feeling like right now is like fight, flight, freeze, fight, flight, freeze. On the amygdala and cortisol, they're so rampant that we're somehow like losing the focal point of the prefrontal cortex, which is doing one thing at a time thoughtfully and really well. Speaking to
Yes.
one person at a time thoughtfully, connected, and really well. Not multitasking in your head
Multitasking.
or around, all the things that are happening. That takes a lot of choice and practice.
Yes.
And it
It
sounds
does.
simple, right?
It does, especially for women, because I don't know about you, but as a woman, I hear so much, oh, women are great at multitasking. It's how your brains are wired. But I really am training myself to not do that. I want to just focus and do my best in one particular task or project as opposed to trying to get so many things done. And as a
Yeah.
mom, as a working mom, sometimes I really have to like remind myself repeatedly to just, you're fine doing one thing. So
That's great
I
because
like that.
I think women are just so highly capable. We've had to be. There's just so many things that are expected upon us as the second sex, if you will. It's still like that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I'll share, well, I don't want to give, but I'll just say, like, one of the things that maybe your listeners or viewers can try who are women, especially if you're in the corporate world at any level, is just stop taking notes. Don't take
Mm.
notes for people anymore. Don't be the one who shares, a follow up. I understand someone's got to, but it always falls on women.
Yes.
And that is kind of the same thing. The crux to bear is, well, she's capable and she can multitask, but at what cost?
Right.
Now I don't have a relationship with my prefrontal cortex. No one's giving me the respect and the space and the authority to say, this is how I manage my time. I've got 5 good hours in me today, and I'm going to use that for this priority. Are we aligned on that? That's a
Mm.
very different approach than I'll say yes to anything, and then we get almost addicted to it
Yes.
because it's a hormone, not estrogen, cortisol. We
Mm.
all can get addicted to that, and it's just running on fumes. It's not healthy.
So, what could be the first thing that someone does who is addicted to cortisol?
Noticing it,
Okay.
recognizing, gosh, if I were to rate myself on cortisol each hour, each day, mm, it's really high. When's the last time I've felt like I could get up, think for myself, go take a 10-minute walk, get out of the technology of
Hmm.
work, all the things, your
All the
phone, like
things.
literally unplugging from work several times a day. That's important. If you're not
Hmm.
getting any of that and it feels relentlessly go, 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 and you're always telling people they have to cancel plans because you're so busy, that's the sign.
Mm-hmm.
Too
Yeah.
much cortisol. We got to detox from the cortisol,
Yes.
which setting boundaries and sticking with them is one way, one path to get there.
Gosh, this is so great because I'm learning how, I bet this is how you work with your clients, is walking them through this.
Yeah.
And you're giving us like a preview of how it's like to
You're
work with you. So thank you. And
welcome.
you heard it here. Awareness is the starting point to getting yourself unaddicted to cortisol. If that is something that you're dealing with right now, guys, it's okay. Don't shame yourself
That's
and
right.
just make the changes that you need to make, whether it's to
Hmm.
go outside, right? Unplug for a little bit. And like Ingrid's book, in her self-discovery of her leadership, it's sort of like you just find what the next step is as you go
That's
along,
right.
right? Ingrid, is there anything else that you want to part us with? Any last words that you want to leave?
Just that there is so much choice that we have. And there's a whisper sometimes that we just need to pay attention to and put a mic up to it. Be like, yes, I want to hear you. I'm choosing to listen to you and slow down and play. There's a lot of play and discovery. So I shared this book. I never wrote a book before. And by the time I got out of that infant feeling of like, oh, I'm bad at something. I don't like it. I don't know. Outside of that discomfort, outside of that newness, you can discover play. And even past that, transformation. And even past that, peace. Like
Hmm.
true, like peace, like return to some moments where you're almost bored. It's like what they're trying to
Yeah.
do with this, like, new generation. They're giving each other 15 minutes to just be bored. Maybe that's what we need as adults too,
Yeah.
as leaders, 15 minutes, boredom, nothing.
Boredom.
I think it's a journey that doesn't need to be alone, is maybe the last thing I'll part with. Whether
Hmm.
it's writing your story or being a leader, a coach. I had a writing coach. I am a coach. Leaders need coaches. Leaders need a lot of things. Please don't do this alone. It's not healthy.
Oh my
um,
God.
so
Don't do
whether
life
it's
alone
yeah,
either.
don't do
It's not
life
healthy.
alone. Yeah, and if you're a leader and you are fully employed and you're making some money, please set money aside for you, your therapy, your
Hmm.
coaching, maybe you really want to rock climb or ride horses. Like, go, do it. Make time for that because again, it's like your life and you get to choose. So choose it.
Mm. Thank you so much, Ingrid. Now that I talk to you, I feel like writing a memoir is something more people should do, even just as like a personal exercise, because you're going to be able to like really get to know yourself. So,
I'd love that. I'd love to read people's memoirs. So yes, please, Mary, write your memoir. People listening and watching, write your story. Like people want to hear it. And it's never not interesting. It's always interesting.
Thank you so much, Ingrid.
Thank you,
If you
Mary.
want to, of course, if you want to get a copy of Ingrid's book, it's on Amazon. Beautiful audio, paper, Kindle
Kindle.
version,
Hmm.
all available. Ingrid, if there are people who want to work with you, what is the best way to get in touch?
Yes, they can go to my website, which is my full name, ingridhudahl.com. And of course, if you're interested in learning more about the book, it's the title of the book.com, Sun Shining on Morning Snow.
Amazing. And if you're going to be in LA, when are you speaking at UCLA? Now I'm like
In
promoting it for you.
February. Yeah. It's for the Critical and Mixed Race Studies Conference. So I'm probably going to organize an event as well outside of campus. But yeah, that would be lovely if people wanted to come.
Amazing. All right, we'll put all that information in the show notes for everyone to enjoy. Until then, thank you so much for joining us, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks,
Thank you, Ingrid,
Mary.
again. If you like this episode, consider subscribing, sharing, and leaving a rating and review. Tradition Breakers is produced by Tasty Sounds, and the theme music is by DJ Professor Moses.